Haven't been putting a lot of work in either, to be honest. I hadn't had a hit since Trent Bolt ripped my off pole out against New Zealand a week ago. So, I can't lie to you and say I've been working on my batting this week either.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cricket Unfiltered. That was Adam Zampa talking after Australia defeated England by 33 runs in the World Cup overnight and eliminated our old enemy from the tournament. I'm Menners. I'm joined by Fox Sports writer Jono Baruch. Jono, I've been saying for a long time that this is a player-run team, and kudos to them. They're doing great, but it doesn't fill me with great enthusiasm that they're not batting at all in between games. Adam Zampa there admitted to not picking up the willow for a week. Who knows how long before that it had a net. Cause for concern?
Well, firstly, it's great to be back, Menners. Great to be back after a win. I think last time I was on, we'd just lost to England, so it's great to have the tables turned. Is it concerning? Well, Adam Zampa's is the leading wicket taker in the tournament and has been producing some amazing performances with the ball. He had an amazing all-round game against England, which I'm sure we're going to get into shortly. But does it worry me? Maybe. But if he's doing what he's been doing with the ball, 4 wickets, 3 wickets, and another 3 wickets against England, then if it's a formula that's working for him, then let it keep going.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm kind of I'm hamming it up a bit because I've been giving the coaching staff and Cummins a hard time for a while on this podcast and saying things like they don't train, they don't do fielding practice. So when things like this pop up that prove my point that it is a player-run team, I accept that though, and they're a great bunch of guys. But yeah, I guarantee if Justin Langer was the coach, that they would be batting in the nets between games. Anyway, look, let's not get stuck in the mud because it's a great night. I mean, we're going to get into the details, and I want to talk about some of the makeup of the team. But John, all I can say is Johnny Bairstow getting out for a golden duck was like the best thing to happen this year. Like to just compound that misery onto him after his whining since that incident at Lord's, just so good to see him out for a golden duck.
Chef's kiss, wasn't it, to many Australians, but especially the way it happened, a bit of a loosener down the leg side, and for him to feather it. Great take by Josh Inglis behind the stumps, putting in the massive full length dive there. But it just really set it off, especially when you looked at the end of the batting innings. It looked as if Australia didn't really have enough runs, and to get off to the perfect start there with first ball of the innings, a bit loosener, and like you can say you feel a little bit stiff for Johnny Bairstow, but then you actually remember who you're dealing with, then everything's okay in the world. So it was the perfect start to the
It was so good. It was just seeing him trotting back, shaking his head. I mean, I really don't like the guy actually after his histrionics at Lord's.
Holds a grudge, doesn't he?
Yes, and so do I. So it ain't going away. A couple of things. Firstly, I haven't done a podcast since Glenn Maxwell's unfortunate accident where he fell off a golf cart, and I'm struggling to decide if I want to be angry about that, because these things can happen, but I don't think it's a good look for Glenn Maxwell that this has happened to him again, Jono.
Yeah, the rap sheet, if you can call it a rap sheet, starting to get quite long with these. Like, bear in mind it's only 2, but you've got 2 incidents in the space of 12 months, really. You like broke his leg playing beer pong at a friend's birthday party, and now this falling off the back of a golf cart and concussing yourself in a week between World Cup games. So I think, first of all, you're thinking, why isn't he in the golf cart? Especially when he's one of the most important players to this team in this World Cup campaign, like from when the team wasn't going so well, and now when they are going well, he's still one of their best players and one of the most important players in all 3 facets of the game. So you're wondering why A, he made the choice to hang off the back of the golf cart, or B, his teammates weren't in a state to say, actually, Maxi, you take a seat. We kind of need you. So is it concerning that he did it? Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to take golf and leisure activities away from the players especially
No,
in a
no,
week
not at
between
all.
games. Absolutely not. You need to give them some time to breathe and some time for them to be themselves and let their hair down a little bit, but not to the extent where you're going to go and actually do yourself a little bit of a mischief. So it's disappointing and concerning. Thankfully, it's after the fact now and he's been in the nets and he should be okay to go for the next game in a few days' time. But these are the types of things, Menas, that can derail a campaign, especially one that has been gathering steam and momentum like the
Exactly.
Australian campaign has had. So that and the unfortunate situation with Mitchell Marsh, it definitely would have sent a few, would have been a few nervous times for that Australian team and support staff and Australian cricketing fans around the world. But thankfully, stresses were put to bed and Mitch Marsh will come back, and it's looking like that Glenn Maxwell's mischief is only a minor one. So it should be okay from that perspective.
Absolutely, and we beat England, and that's the main thing. But also, I mean, yeah, these
How
things
many times are we
are
going to get that in on this show?
a lot. But the thing is, these things can derail the campaign in ways like, for example, I think it's important for Australia, if they can, to finish second or third. And look, you can probably assume India is going to finish first, although South Africa could just pip them. But it would be in Australia's best interest to avoid India in that semi-final. So there is, real merit in winning every game and having every player fit. And you're right, Mitch Marsh. And the news has come out that unfortunately his grandfather Ross passed away on Friday. That was why he had to leave the camp. So he will be heading back to India soon. All our sympathies with Mitch Marsh. But you put the two together, Maxwell's accident and Mitch Marsh's unfortunate news, it left Australia shorthanded against England. And in the end, the players that were there did the job. But as you say, it can send things awry. Anyway, let's get into the game. England won the toss. They sent Australia into bat. And the two changes were Cameron Green and Marcus Stoinis came in for Mitch Marsh and Glenn Maxwell. Everyone moved up one place in the order. So Mitch Marsh came out of 3. Smith, Labuschagne and Inglis all went up. Green went into 6. So Australia batted first. And we'll go through sort of the individual dismissals. But, Jono, I thought what characterised this innings for Australia was a lot of starts and quite a few sloppy shots. I thought Head, Warner, Smith, Inglis, Stoinis all played shots that they ended up getting themselves out when they were well set.
Yeah, only I think if you look down the list and you look down the scores, a lot of them got going except for maybe Josh Inglis, and then you'd have to say, Menas, that a lot of them fell in the traditional dismissals for those types of players. So Travis Head nicking off to slip, David Warner mistiming a pull shot and it going straight up and getting caught on the ring. Steve Smith getting out, Marcus Stoinis going for one big shot too many off the part-time spinner. So they're all, I'd say, avoidable dismissals. And you got, I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, but you got to the end of the innings and you look down the batting card and it's like, gee, they left a few runs out there, didn't they? And it was almost like you wanted one of those in-batters to really get in and get large. Cameron Green's dismissal one that really was like, well, there was just 0 point to that for that time in the innings. And all the way down, you look through the list and it's just like, well, they all really got themselves out except for Marnus Labuschagne, who got wrapped on the pads by a express ball from Mark Wood. So you look at that and it's just like, well, again, it's another frustrating batting display, but especially when you get popped into bat on a scorching hot day. Why England decided on an absolutely scorching day to win the toss and send the opposition in, we'll never know. But worked out in Australia's favour. Yeah, well, maybe we'll get to do a deep dive with them and talk about their problems. That'll be a funny discussion. But from an Australian
but you're right about that. You'd expect, say, Smith gets to 44, Labuschagne gets to 71. One of them to go on and maybe make 100 and anchor the innings, and everyone else bats around them. But they ended up
even those in the mid 40s. So Smith getting to 40, but not quite going on with it. Stoinis getting another score in the 30s. He hasn't made a score He hasn't made a score above 50 in ODI cricket for a good few years now, and he hasn't made a half century in a winning team ever. Thank you to Nick Savage for that lovely stat there. So it's the failure to go on. Cameron Green is in a fight for his international life at the moment, and he would have wanted to go out and make some big runs, not for the rest of this World Cup, but
I thought he made 47 off 52. I thought that was quite a good innings from him because
he batted
good.
really well until he decided he just got loose towards the end of it, and it showed with his dismissal trying to reverse sweep. I think it was David Willey he ended up getting bowled by and losing his leg stump out of the ground. So again, just a series of strange dismissals, but it kind of sums up a bit where the middle order's at the moment. I know there was a bit of changing to the team with the two forced changes going out, but it's kind of the one area you look down the list and it goes like, okay, the bowling's kind of sorting itself out. The top order's going well. Head's just made 100. David Warner's in form. There's a decision to be made between Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne, which I'm sure we will discuss shortly. But there's just something in that middle order that's still a little bit shaky. Which, okay, you've got your games to come are against Afghanistan and Bangladesh, and while Afghanistan are no slouches, you get afforded the opportunity now to have a look at a couple of different things.
Well, also Inglis, I feel like they've backed Inglis in now at the last minute. So Inglis is kind of finding his feet now at international level. He's never had this kind of extended run in the middle order. So you've got that happening. You're right. There's a few players trying to find their feet. You mentioned Smith and Labuschagne. What do you think of that combination in the middle order? Smith made 44 off 52. Labuschagne 71 off 83. I mean, Marnus played well. He started slowly but caught up. But, do you think they're too similar? And then, Jono, if you had to decide, who would you pick?
Yeah, this is one of two really tough decisions that the selectors are going to make. I think I think you said it, Menas. They're exactly the same. They both work in the same 11 for Test cricket when you're trying to play the patient game and you're trying to bat time and go through the gears when you can. But you only really need one insurance policy in one day cricket. You want to go hard and you want to try accelerate the innings as quickly as you can. You don't necessarily have room in a limited overs innings for two insurance policies. So if you have Head and Warner up the top, Mitch Marsh at number 3, and you've got Steve Smith or Marnus Labuschagne there for if you're 2 for 20 and you have to rebuild the innings inside the opening couple of overs. And the theory there is that they can bat time, they can accelerate when they need to, and they can put up a decent score on the board, whether it be high double figures or hopefully 3 figures. I think what it's going to come down to is because Maxwell's going to come back in, Mitch Marsh is going to come back in. So there's going to be 2 spots, and one of them will be an all-rounder that goes out. And
so I think Green will go out. Yeah,
definitely. I think Green will go out, but Marcus Stoinis is a little bit too fragile at the moment, so that worries me. And that's why I'd probably go Green over Stoinis. But Stoinis does have that experience, and I think the decision with Smith or Marnus, I'm interested in your opinion here.
Okay.
I think on reputation they'll pick Smith, but on form they should pick Marnus.
It's an interesting one because I do think Marnus looks in better touch than Smith at the moment. He just looks slightly in better nick, but I think you're right. I think Smith is, by far the better 50 over player historically. He's proven himself in the big matches. Steve Smith in World Cup semi-finals. So, against India at the SCG, made that famous 100 in 2015. So I think you've got to go with Smith. I think it's a very tough decision. But I also think if you get to the wickets and the pitches look like they're not great for batting, then you've got to try and fit both in like they did in the match before. And maybe, Stoinis and Green don't play and you just go with your 4 quicks, Zampa.
I think
3 quicks and Zampa, sorry.
No, go on. It's okay. I think the other thing you just mentioned the wickets. The wickets are starting to really wear and get lower and slower, and particularly as the tournament goes later. And just even think back a week ago against New Zealand, Australia don't win that game if Marnus Labuschagne isn't fielding on the boundary. So you need to pick players who have that whole package. While Steve Smith can do some freakish things in the infield and in the slips and with some catching. Labuschagne's boundary fielding is arguably more valuable at the moment, given the way the tournament's trending. So, do you box Steve Smith into an 11?
They're going to pick Smith. They're going to pick Smith. So the only way thing is, as I said, I think if they might not pick both all rounders. So Green and Stoinis both go out, and then Mitch Marsh and Maxi come back in, and Smith and Lasagna keep playing. All right, I want to keep going though on the wrap. So Australia at one stage were 247 for 8 when Pat Cummins were out. So we discussed, a lot of starts, everyone, getting themselves out. Only Labuschagne getting past 50, and then this is when Adam Zampa's heroic match begun. So I made fun of him at the top, but the true story is apparently he went up into the Himalayas after the game against Dharamsala and went and wore a dress for a couple of days and wandered around relaxing because he's not into golf. So what happened was they all went off and played in the Jesse Ryder Cup, organized by Mitchell Stark. And that's what happened. They all played 36 holes in one day.
Does this have more prestige than the Steely Cup, or is that still the #1 golfing trophy in Australian cricket?
I don't know. You'd have to. I would say the Jesse Ryder Cup probably slightly shades it, but Mitch Stark has a hand in both apparently. So while all the guys were playing golf, Zampa was up in the Himalayas meditating and getting all zenned out, and then he comes out. And it's 247 for 8. Australia still had 5 and a bit overs to go. Mark Wood was bowling quick. I mean, I wouldn't want to go out there and face Wood, having not batted in the nets for 2 months, and Wood's bowling 150 clicks at you. And Zampa, out of nowhere, smashes 29 off 19 balls. He and Mitchell Stark put on 38 runs. They get the score to 285 for 9. And then Stark takes the score to 286 before they're all out. But that was a crucial little partnership. I mean, Australia wins by 33 runs in the end. Zampa, not known for his batting, it was the start of a great night for him.
It certainly was. To quote a famous Sydney figure, Adam Zampa is a unique individual. So he does things his own way, and it was a little gem of an innings. And for someone who, as he said in his own words, hasn't picked up a bat in a while and had a practice hit. Well, if he can do that, he might just pick up and ask for some more net time. But absolute crucial knock, particularly with overs to come in, batting with Mitchell Stark. You would have thought Mitchell Stark would have taken the lead role and tried to clear the boundary as many times as he could. But no, he just nerdled it around a little bit, some unconventional shots, some cracking shots as well, like some straight drives and cover drives to pierce the infield and go through all the way to the boundary. So, as you said, crucial knock, and started off a fantastic night for him. I think didn't concede a boundary in his 10 overs, an absolute brilliant spell of bowling, and then that magnificent catch in the end. One of his finest performances in an Australian shirt.
Well, he said it was his favourite ever ODI performance, and a well-deserved player of the match performance. Now, just on the England bowlers, so Australia all out for 286 in the 50th over. David Willey rejected by English cricket, 10 overs, 1 for 48. Chris Wokes is bouncing back, 9.3 overs, 4 for 54. And now this is where I think Mark Wood's performance kind of sums up England's whole campaign. 10 overs, 2 for 70, hostile bowling at times. There was a great duel between he and Cameron Green. You see Cameron Green was hurried up by Mark Wood, but Mark Wood just looked upset. He looked frustrated. He didn't look to be enjoying his cricket at all. And if someone like Mark Wood is looking like that, then it really reeks to me that English side is just in complete, absolute free fall now. And, karma will get you. That was just incredible to watch. But do you agree with me? Like Mark Wood, he didn't look to be happy. He sort of sums up England's performance.
Yeah, there's a bit in that, I reckon. Just you looked at Mark Wood during the Ashes, and he was always running in like a bit of a
Yeah,
playful
smiling and being
playful
an
child,
idiot.
smiling, bowling rockets, really
Yeah,
being the energizer bunny in that
yeah,
England
holding
team.
hands
But
with Stokesy. Yeah,
yeah, you're right. He looked very jaded and like probably building up out of steam and bowling quickly just because he was trying to like channel all his anger into bowling, which is fine. That's kind of what you want a fast bowler to do, and just build up all that energy and fire and brimstone and really just let rip it at the bowling crease and bowl as fast as you can. So maybe that worked for him. But as you said, 2 for 70, got the big wicket of Marnus and then picked up Green towards the end, but went around the park a little bit as well, which is always a threat when you're bowling 90 miles an hour and there's fielding restrictions. It's interesting. And whether or not, and this is a bit looking into the future a bit now for England, but whether or not they decide, well, look, we've only got less than a handful of games to go. Our tournament's cooked. Do we put Woody on ice now for the remainder of the tournament and bring in a Gus Atkinson or bring in a Bryden Cass and
I
try
think
and
you have
usher
to.
in that?
You have
Usher
to.
in that next generation, particularly when you've got important tours coming up. Like they're back in India in what is it now? It's November. They're back in India in 2 months, and
Absolutely, and they've got
Woody's
to
gonna
start
be
building
important.
up to the next World Cup. So also, I guess Adil Rashid bowled excellently, 10 overs, 2 for 38, and
Always does.
that, and that's absolutely, and that's just one thing that everyone can get as excited as they want about Australia, but as at some stage they're probably going to come up against India's spinners, and there is nothing to suggest that Australia will go any better than they've gone in the past, which means India will smash us. So that's just because the danger signs are there. All right, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back to wrap up the England reply. You're listening to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I'm Menas. I'm with Jono from Fox Sports, and we're wrapping up the Australia versus England cricket. So Australia make 286, and then, well, we mentioned at the top of the show, but Mitchell Starc gets Johnny Bairstow, first ball just swinging down leg, clips it to English, who takes a great catch, and England are 1 for none. And again, that just sums up their whole campaign. It sums up Bairstow's year, really. And yeah, again, how good? Can we?
Yeah, it was good. It was funny to see. Again, as a batter, you're kind of just like, well, that's stiff. You tickle one down the leg side, but then again, you see who's tickled it down the leg side, and as an Australian, you can't help but chuckle just a little bit.
I was really watching all the Australian teams celebrate, and it was. I mean, but the Australian team is saying, "Oh, it's in the past. It's in the past. We're moving on." I really think these teams don't like each other. Like, I think, there's certain players that, know each other and fine. It's not like as toxic as maybe it's been in the past, but I think they kind of don't like each other after the Ashes. And there's some sort of scabs there.
Yeah, I think there's always been, like you'd know better than me, that I think over the years the camaraderie between the teams has gotten better, and everyone's mellowed a little bit, just in terms of he's English, I can't talk to him, or he plays for that team, there's no way I'm gonna chat with him. So I think over the years that sort of mellowed, but I think there's still some genuine tension between the sides, and it's competitive. There's competitive spirit, but as you said, I think there's some players, particularly I think mainly on the England camp, that still haven't gotten over a particular stumping in the Ashes series, and we're happy to bring it up and talk about it whenever they want to and express their feelings and disappointment. Whereas Australia wants to move on as much as they have, and credit to them for not fanning the flames and bringing
but I
it
think
up.
underneath it all, the Aussies think the English have been wankers. They're carrying on that they're saving cricket, and then one of them gets stumped and they cry like babies about it. So I just think you don't have to scratch too hard. And I think like Pat Cummins, like I think Pat Cummins is pissed off with the way Stokes treated him at the end of the Ashes. Like he disrespected him. So, you know, Cummins swallowed his pride. He was willing to go in there and shake hands and, you know, have a beer, and they, you know, they turned their nose up in typical, you know, Pommy fashion.
Yeah, well, there's so many different reports and stories going around about what happened at the end of that Ashes series in regards to they didn't meet up in the rooms, but they met up in a nightclub, and whether or not it was planned or just a coincidence. And he said this and she said that, and who spoke to him and who spoke to him, and there's so many different things going around. But I think, for want of a better term, I think the Australians are doing their best to try and move on, whereas
Absolutely.
the English are trying to, you know, keep the flames alive and still trying to, you know, build up their own motivation until when the next Ashes series comes around. And every single time they face off against Australia, and just go like, oh, this is for the spirit of Johnny Bairstow, because he was wrongly given out, and therefore we must avenge the wrong decision, even though it was fully within the laws of the game.
Exactly. And did you see during the week when one of the media asked Marnus Labuschagne about the word "bazball" being put in the English dictionary, and Marnus went, "That's garbage. That is garbage. It is garbage."
I think Marnus is speaking from on behalf of the whole country there. Like, just to have a word put in the dictionary, which isn't even a word, it's just made up, and it's just like I fully agree with Marnus. Can we get on to talking about Marnus? Because I really want to talk about what happened next.
Yes. So Australia burns a review, I think, with Joe Root off Mitchell Starc. And then in the fifth over, ball beats Joe Root, goes through to Josh Inglis, and there's a big appeal. Now, I'm going to own up to this. Marnus is running in and he's begging them to review, and I'm shouting at the TV, do not listen to Marnus. He's a lunatic. I'm ready to tweet out something like, if Cummins listens to Marnus here, he's nuts, because, you know, Marnus thinks everything's out. He thinks when he's batting, he thinks everything's not out, and he reviews everything. And lo and behold, they review it, and there's just a little spike as the ball goes past Joe Root's bat, and he's out. He's out for 13. England are 2 for 19, and Mitchell Starc has 2 power play wickets when he hasn't really been able to do that consistently in the tournament. But I mean, that was incredible, because, as I said, don't listen to Marnus.
Well, the first rule of taking a review should be, do not listen to Marnus Labuschagne for all the reasons that you articulated there. He always thinks he's out, but came pounding in and is almost just like, oh, what are you doing? And as you said, they'd burnt a review still in the first over of the inning. So they'd gotten Bairstow out first ball, and then towards the end of the over, they went for a review, which was just going over the top of the stumps. So burnt a review there. And a few overs later, they took a review. Like fair enough, it's Joe Root. If you think you're gonna get him, then you're probably well within your rights to use a review on him. But it's not like a review for caught behind is very different to a review by LBW. It's either out or it's not. So either you get him or it's not, and you lose the review. Whereas if you're going up for a LBW review, you can be saved by an umpire's call, which means you can keep the review. So it was a very gutsy decision from Pat Cummins, and kudos to him for actually listening to Marnus, and kudos for Marnus for actually being resolute. I just hope someone tells him, like, I'm all for Marnus for pulling out all the bells and whistles and all the pull down signs to be like, I was right, and like, yay. But I really hope someone not necessarily pulls him in, and just remind him of what his record is.
Pulls up his stats. You know, you won for about 80 now, so
just remind him that, look, mate, you might have got one, but there's still a bit of a history here, and we've still got a World Cup to win. So we'll listen to you this time, and maybe not all the time, but well done. We'll give you this one.
Yeah, I think at some stage I heard some of the players talking about it afterwards, that Pat Cummins at one stage out there told Marnus to shut up, because Marnus kept saying, oh, yeah, no, it's out. And Cummins just said, shut up, Marnus. And he started asking everybody else. So I think they did a bit of a straw poll out there. But anyway, the right result happened because Root was out. Then we saw a nice little partnership between David Milan and Ben Stokes until Milan was out for 50, an even 50 off 64 balls. Just a loose shot, paddling one behind square off Cummins on the leg side. Travis Head took the catch, and that made England 3 for 103. And then I thought that probably the turning point for me was this Josh Buttler dismissal, when he just hit one straight down the ground, and he was caught by Cameron Green off the bowling of Adam Zampa for 1. That made the score 4 for 106. And although Ben Stokes was still out there, I just thought the wheels were starting to fall off for England. And, it began a fantastic spell of bowling for Adam Zampa. 10 overs, 3 for 21, slightly damp ball. He didn't concede a boundary or a 6 in his whole spell. And just a phenomenal performance from him through the middle overs. Stokes and Moeen Ali resurrected things, but they just couldn't do it quickly enough.
Yeah, you had your moments during that partnership, whereas you kept on thinking back to Australia don't necessarily have that many runs, and although England lost 2 early wickets, they do bat very deep, and they've got Stokes in who's going to do his thing. David Milan, although he hasn't had a brilliant World Cup, has had a great run over the last 12 months in 50-over cricket. Josh Buttler, exactly what he can produce, and Moeen Ali can hit a ball absolutely anywhere, and they bat all the way down to Chris Woakes and David Willey at 8 and 9. So you knew that there was plenty of batting to come, and they could all put together certain partnerships. But again, it comes down to Cummins's not necessarily his intuition, but his knowing of which bowlers can come back and do a job and get a wicket for him, and also bringing him back at the right time. So he brings Zampa back as Milan's just brought up his milestone there. He's formed a partnership with Stokes there. I think Milan and Stokes have put on about 80 since they were 2 for not many. And Stokes had been, and not Stokes, Milan had been playing that almost like that reverse pull shot very, very well. He'd gotten onto a couple. He got one off Mitchell Stark, and then he brings Zampa back, takes all the pace off the ball, flights it. He tries to go the big heave again and trying to almost break the back of the chase, because I reckon if those two go on to post a three-figure partnership, and the same with Stokes and Moeen Ali when they're batting, like they shuffled the order a little bit after Josh Buttler threw his wicket away, and he's just had a torrid on this tournament, Buttler. But
that's
again,
you look at Zampa though. He got Stokes, Buttler, and Ali, 3 massive wickets,
three of the biggest wickets in that England lineup through the middle order. And again, it comes back to Cummins's points of when he's going to bring Zampa back. So he didn't have Maxwell to call upon in the power play and to start bowling at the end of the power play and at the start of the middle overs. So he had to bring on Zampa early there. Couldn't necessarily find a breakthrough, but then brings him back at the start of the 20th over phase of the game, removes Milan and removes Buttler. Then he goes out of the attack for a little bit, brings him back to come back and get Stokes just when he looks like he's going to go into Terminator mode.
Cummins got Milan. So Cummins brought himself back, got Milan, and then Zampa got Buttler, and then he got Ali and Stokes pretty quickly. So at that stage, I mean, it was all over for England. The tail wagged a bit. Like Woakes got 32, Willey 15, Adil Rashid 20, and they got to 253. But it never really got nervous for Australia. Josh Hazlewood got 2 wickets at the end. He got Willey and Adil Rashid. He finished with 2 for 49. Cummins 2 for 49 as well. Mitchell Stark 2 for 66. And you mentioned that catch of Adam Zampa's off David Willey. I mean, okay, so he's running in off the boundary. Like if you look at it, I think he got a bit lucky. Like he just kind of like he looked like Phil Tufnell taking a catch.
Yeah, he did well to get to it. He did really well to get to it and then control the ball on the way down. He's not necessarily known for his outfielding and his catching, Zampa. So
no, he said that as well in the press conference.
No, he did quite well. He's usually the one bowling and setting up outfield catches. So for him to be on the end of it, as I said up at the top, it's one of his finest performances in an Australian shirt. And not close to being one of the most all-round performances ever, but in a World Cup, considering the circumstances, a game against England, to be able to knock England out, it's right up there with some of the most impactful all-round performances. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
very good night
Especially
to
Yeah, especially when we're undermanned as well. No Maxwell, no Marsh. It
100%.
was it was really good stuff. And
Mm.
so Australia knock England out. They win by 33 runs, and then they go up to third on the ladder in the World Cup. And we'll get to the World Cup ladder because it took a bizarre twist on Saturday night. New Zealand versus Pakistan has thrown open fourth place. It looked like the top four was kind of settled with New Zealand looking the favourites, but Pakistan have knocked them off in sensational fashion. New Zealand batted first, made 6 for 401. Rachin Ravindra made his third World Cup century. Kane Williamson made 95. So you're thinking with 400 on the board, you're feeling pretty safe. Pakistan surged to 1 for 200 in 25.3 overs, with Fakhar Zaman 126 not out off 81 balls with 11 sixes. Babar Azam was not out 66. And then the rain came and they go off. They don't come back. I think they've gone off and come back briefly. And then Pakistan win on Duckworth Lewis Stern.
Yeah.
I mean, so just an incredible result. I don't have any problem with that. I mean, I think it 1 for 200 after 25 overs. Pakistan were clearly on top.
Well, for starters, this is the most Pakistan result ever. Concede 400 and then somehow win the game.
Win.
It's really, really funny. But 100%. Like, I was following the scores, but I was just like, Pakistan are going to get the runs here. And then they go off a rain and the DLS comes out there 10 runs ahead. They managed to get on for about 2 or 3 overs. And then Williamson, who was so good on return, like batted like an absolute dream before he went out going for glory, trying to get his 100, and took a brilliant catch to remove Abdullah Shafiq. And then he throws the ball to Ish Sodhi, who's come in cold. This is his first game of the tournament. It's a wet ball. It's a wet outfield. And he ends up going for Fakhar Zaman, takes him for about 20 in one of his overs, which is it absolutely shuts the door, particularly with rain coming, and it just allows Pakistan to pull further ahead. So it's almost calamitous from New Zealand. They've now lost three games on the bounce and are in danger of losing their semi-final spot to Pakistan, who are surging, Afghanistan. Thereabouts.
So the ladder, you got India on top, South Africa second, Australia third, and then you've got New Zealand, Pakistan, and Afghanistan all on 8 points each. Afghanistan have 2 games left, so they have a great chance. If they beat Australia, and I don't know who their other opponent is, but if they win out, they'll be in the semi-finals. So it's wide open 4th spot. Australia are set to play Afghanistan on Tuesday night. So massive game for Afghanistan, massive game for Australia as well. But as I said, they're looking pretty good with their net run rate no matter what happens. There's been a bit of chatter because, Australia cancelled a bilateral series against Afghanistan due to political reasons and some of the policies in Afghanistan around human rights issues. And now there's some people saying that it's hypocritical that Australia are going to play Afghanistan in the World Cup. Now, listeners to this show will know I've had Craig Foster on and we've spoken about it, and it's a very complex issue. I personally don't think Australia should be playing Afghanistan in major world tournaments, and I think it should have been decided a long time ago. But the CEO of Cricket Australia, Nick Hockley, says that they can clearly delineate between a bilateral series that they organise and a world event that Australia takes part in. And Nick Hockley said that when you take part in these events, you sign a contract saying you're going to play every match. So if Australia were to breach that, there would be severe financial ramifications for Australia. You can guarantee that. So I think it's a bit of a mess up by Australia. I think they should have said before the World Cup they weren't going to play the game. But now I think it's too late to boycott it. Jono, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'll be very careful with my words because I I don't have as much knowledge on the situation as you or Craig Foster might have, but we've been in this situation before, even in the last year in the World Cup in Australia, where Australia had cancelled the Test match and they were drawn in the same group in Afghanistan and ended up playing that game at Adelaide Oval against them, and then there was the cancelling of the tour to Afghanistan earlier this year, and not too many weeks ago, man, as it was looking likely that Australia would have had to play that game against Afghanistan and then likely win big in that game if they wanted to have any hope of qualifying for the semis. Now, while they still need to win the game on Tuesday night to solidify their spot in the semi-finals, look, it's interesting. They're going to be called many different things for going ahead in the game, but I think you've articulated it well, as Nick Ockley said, as part of you can clearly delineate between a bilateral series and a world event like a world heat, like a World Cup or a Champions Trophy or something like that, whereas you have to play the nations in the format that you're drawn against. The bilateral series are done at the discretion of the cricketing boards, and for Cricket Australia to make that stance that they've had against the Afghani government and the Taliban to not play cricket until they solve their issues in their home country is a perfectly fair stance. And yeah, they're going to be called a lot of things for going ahead with the game on Tuesday night. But again, that's the decisions that they make. Again, I don't know. I'll declare this. I don't know all the ins and outs of the issues and the conversations that go around. So it's going to be one to watch.
It will be a good game. I mean, the Afghanistan team's very entertaining, and they could certainly beat Australia, and that would be something. They've got that extra motivation now.
You mentioned the spinners of India before, and let's not forget Afghanistan spinners: Rashid Khan, Mujib, Noor Ahmed, the teenager who's previously been out here for BBL playing with the Renegades, and he's had a pretty good World Cup, taking a lot of wickets through the middle overs. So he's one that Australia is going to find a little bit difficult to get away. So it's going to be a tricky game.
Absolutely. So can't wait for that. But, celebrations across Australia, the moral victors in all ways this year in the Ashes, now on paper, having knocked England out of the World Cup. It's a great weekend. It's great part of the World Cup. Jono, thanks for joining me. Where can the listeners follow you on Twitter to catch up with all your cricket takes?
Yes, it's at Jono Baruch on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it these days. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok. It's all the same. I think it's Jono at Jono B 1995. So hit me up there for some cricket coverage. It's going to be another good summer. Thanks for having me again, man. It was always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. Definitely be getting you on over the summer. Great to talk cricket with you as always. Listeners, thanks for listening. We'll be back this week with more coverage. I'll be commentating on New South Wales v WA at the Sydney Cricket Ground. So if you want to watch some Shield cricket, tune in. But thanks everybody for listening and watching.